Good evening, and welcome to our continuing series, Explorations in Savitri, with our brother Alok. Before we begin, I have a poem to read. It's entitled, Across the Netherlands of Night. The poets speak to such as us, with high-pitched voice and eyes agleam, or resonant, mellifluous, and through their recitations stream truths on our prosaic world, timeless visions of inner sight. Their words, like sparkling gems, are hurled across the Netherlands of night. And then I open Savitri, and reading, often do I weep, for beauty we have never seen, in lines that make the spirit leap beyond the fortress of the mind, reason and intelligence, give sight to that which now is blind, imbuing with a heightened sense awareness of a truth sublime, emergence from our darkened state, the journey of the soul through time, and on its mantras meditate.
Thank you, Narad, for this poem, which I think you are the author, or it has come through you. It just reminded me of another poem of Sri Aurobindo, which is in one of the new meters, and it's titled "Seer Deep-Hearted," which I think is an autobiographical poem, where he speaks of seer deep-hearted, divine king of secrecies. Vast in thy heart was a tide washing the coast of heaven. Occult fountain of love, vast in thy soul was a tide washing the coast of heaven. Thoughts broke burning and bare, crossing the human night. White star scripts of the gods born from the presses of light. Page by page to the dim children of earth were given. And I think it's important background because we are going to start this new canto with the new year. It's book 2, canto 10.
Canto 11.
Canto 11, yes.
The
Book
kingdoms and godheads of the greater mind.
So we have seen that little mind is composed of these three characteristic movements. And all these three movements basically are a kind of ignorance. So that's why he has made a difference between this little mind and the greater mind. So little mind, which means reason, imagination, and the physical mind, the sense mind, which is dependent on the sense data, they are mind of ignorance. So all their knowledge at the end is shadowed with doubt. But moving beyond, we see a greater movement of mind, which is more like a growing light of knowledge. The complete knowledge, the Gnostic mind, comes with supermind. But from this onwards, beyond reason onwards, you see a growing light. So that's why they are like a mind of light. Of course, the mind of light is also used in a certain technical sense, and we can talk about it later. But in this mind, which is beyond this little mind, beyond reason, we see that the mode of working and understanding is very different from the little mind. The little mind is always dependent on the data of the senses. Even in imagination, we throw images which are basically like stored within us through the senses. Whereas we have seen in the previous canto that in its highest reaches, this mind begins to be freed from this data. But the moment it does so, it enters into a state of abstraction and impersonal universality. That is as far as human mind has gone ordinarily. But there is a movement of the mind where there is a light, growing light, and this light can directly go into the heart of things and see a truth. It may not see the complete truth. It doesn't till it is the supermind. But there is an illumination, there is an inspiration, revelation. The Vedic rishis used to use these terms, the four goddesses. Ila, Mahi, Saraswati, Bharati, they were all the powers, Dakshina, right action, or illumination, inspiration. This is the modus operandi of this greater mind, which is so much distrusted by the rational mind. Look, the antagonism. So that's why this greater mind. Second, it moves through large spaces of time. So the little mind can show us only the little events happening in front. And as today, we were just discussing, we'll often hear people saying, oh, it is Ghor Kalyug. I don't know, in India, Kalyug aa gaya. It's such a darkness. Why? Because children don't get up and bow to the parents and say, Namo Nama. So it's the darkest darkness. My personal darkness based on my ego satisfaction. So I asked them, if this is the densest darkness, what was Hitler and Mussolini? What was imperialism? Positivism? That must be some bright age of mankind. So basically we are beginning to come out of darkness. It's very important to understand this. This greater mind can directly perceive. So it can also see the first tendencies and look at far spaces of time. When Sri Aurobindo was asked, for example, that are you so sure that the supermind is going to come down? He says, yes, I see it. And this, I think, either 26 or around that period. So he was asked, what are the signs that the supermind is going to come down? It's in evening talks. And he said there are 5 signs. And one of them is knowledge is bursting beyond its seams. Now when I look back at 26, well, the way knowledge was bursting beyond its seams was, of course, the quantum mechanics. But otherwise, there is so much more which had to happen. And Sri Aurobindo could see at that point of time what's going to happen 100 years down the line. Another example is when Jaya Devi, she told Sri Aurobindo, it's a very sweet anecdote, please, I have one prayer to you. She wanted to go to Rameshwaram and she had a darshan of Sri Aurobindo and didn't go further. So Sri Aurobindo asked her semi-humorously, so aren't you going to Rameshwaram? He said, I have seen living Rameshwar, why should I go to the temple? So one day she tells Sri Aurobindo, Lord, I have one prayer, don't make me a girl in my next birth. Sri Aurobindo said, why? He said, you don't know what it means to be a girl. How would you know? You know what difficult it is to take, even to come here. I had to literally beg my husband and parents to allow me to come here. With so much difficulty I have come. Do you have any idea? Like Bhaktas he tells. And Sri Aurobindo laughs and says, oh, Dad, don't worry. You don't have to be a boy next life. Because the age that is going to come, the girls will be equal to men. This difference will go away. This is in 1928 or 29. This is not an utterance 10 years back. Similarly, you see in 1909 when Sri Aurobindo predicted that there is going to be great upheavals and revolutions amidst which India will be free. Or another Mahavakya that the sun of India's destiny will rise and overflow India and overflow Asia and overflow the world. Now, where did this knowledge come from? There was no idea. At that time, it was a shackles of superstition and slavery of every kind. And who could have foreseen? So, this is where we see the greater mind looking at far spaces of time. And of course, Sri Aurobindo went far beyond into the supramental hypnosis. So, this is what we are going to read today. And today onwards, few sessions. And it starts with one of those heavyweight lines. There ceased the limits of the laboring power. So Sri Aurobindo speaks of this mind, rational mind, as a laboring power. Why? To know anything, it must labor. It's a typical way of, scholarly wisdom. So scholarly wisdom is a laboring power. It will gather from here, there, it will take up data, analyze it, and at the end of it, with so much headache, it will arrive at a truth which is self-evident to the greater mind. I think I spoke of this example where Pavitrada and Mrityunjay, they went about Golkund, they were having a problem with the design and Raymond. And mother suddenly looked at it and said, why don't you try it this way and here? And they said, yeah, we never thought of it. How did you know it? So, the laboring power. There are so many examples of mother's life when she was walking with Amrita and suddenly one lady jumped and outpoured all her grief in Tamil. And mother stood. And then she responded. She asked, communicated what had to be communicated. She was more than satisfied and goes away. And Amrita, with his sense of humor and half amazement, asked the mother, Mother, you know Tamil also? I didn't know this. Mother said, I don't need to know Tamil to know this. So you see, the laboring power, but laboring power cannot work like that. There sees the limits of the laboring power. It's a spontaneous, intuitive knowledge. But being and creation sees not there. So another heavy line where he is revealing in one line that one of the greatest folly of man is that my limits are the limits of creation. So the limits of our sight are not the limits of light. Today we are discovering it in many ways. So being and creation sees not there. For thought transcends the circles of mortal mind. It is greater than its earthly instrument. The Godhead crammed into mind's narrow space escapes on every side into some vast that is a passage to infinity. You are on page 260, incidentally. So again we make the same mistake of mistaking the instrument for the force.
Sri Aurobindo capitalizes thought.
Yes.
Very important.
That's why the Vedas speak of the 7-headed, 9-headed, even a 10-headed thought, dasagvahas. And basically it is that what we call as thought, thinking it's the brain. It's not the brain. Thoughts come from a very high realm and they sail into our ken and they trigger nerve impulses and take a certain form. But thoughts are not born here. There is a whole poem on birth of thought. Another one, thought the paraclete. The thought the paraclete, now paraclete is a word which like reconnoiters, goes far. So thoughts are a tremendous power. The practical import of this always we find in Savitri, that thoughts are a tremendous power. And like any other power, if we harness it and learn to direct it, it can take us far and high, right on the doors of the supramental. But very often this power is misused by all the darkness within us, and we are all the time, also because we are all the time turned upon ourselves. So this power is deformed and debased. But this energy, this power is a vehicle which can take us very far and high. That's why one of the first talks that Mother gives to a group is how to master thought. One of the first things in spiritual life that one ought to learn is mastery of thought. So much so that you think what you want to think. It's tremendous capacity. It moves eternal in the spirit's field, a runner towards the far spiritual light, a child and servant of the spirit's force. It's born out of the spirit's force and serves its needs. So there is a very powerful passage in The Secret of the Vedas where Shri Aurobindo says, our forefathers swam through a sea of thought. It's, I think, in a letter to Barin. But he's referring to the Vedic seers. Our forefathers were not afraid of thinking. He speaks of one of the causes of India's decline. And he says it's a refusal to think. We just accept things. Nowadays the latest is WhatsApp. So if WhatsApp says there is something called vitamin B17, it exists. And if I tell them there is no such thing, so the answer is you don't know. So where is it there? It's on WhatsApp. So it's a refusal to think. So he says that one of the causes of India's decline is a refusal to think, which means to accept things on their face value. And that's why he says India will have to go through a period when the youngsters will challenge their scriptural knowledge. It has to go through that phase, because then only you will discover the truth behind it. Otherwise, you will only discover the form. So, and this refusal came because we were made to believe that we can't think.
A nation of clerks.
A nation of clerks. But now this thought is waking up. And he said this, it's important to learn to think. So he says, our forefathers were not afraid of thinking. They swam through a sea of thought. Look at the line. Towards the light. But mind too falls back from a nameless peak. So he is showing us the whole panorama. His being stressed beyond the sight of thought. Now look at the expression, sight of thought. There is a seeing thought, known as Pashyanti Buddhi. Sri Aurobindo speaks of Krishna Prem and says that he has a Pashyanti Buddhi. He can see, the thought can see, the intelligence can see. So from the sight of thought. So thought is only a string of words through which one is formulating what the thought mind has seen. For the spirit is eternal and unmade. So now, Ashupati is seeing beyond that whole panorama, right to the supramental and, the nameless peak. For the spirit is eternal and unmade, and not by thinking was its greatness born, and not by thinking can its knowledge come. So you see the completeness of Sri Aurobindo, that he has in one stroke revealed to us the greatness of thought, but he has also said, do not think that by thinking you can find the self. Look. And the famous René Descartes is, of course, a misquote. He didn't mean it in that sense, but I think, therefore I am. Whereas, say, the spiritual way of looking at it, whether I live or die, I am. I am, therefore I think. It is not that I think, therefore I am. I am, therefore I think. Its feet are steadied upon finite things. No, we have missed two lines. It knows itself, and in itself it lives. It's about the spirit. When Mother was asked how to know that you have realized the psychic being, she says, if you have a question, you have not realized it. When you realize it, you know it. In the Upanishad, it's put like this: avijñātam vijanata, vijñātam avijanata. One of those paradoxical writings. He who knows it not. He who has not the thought of it knows it. He who thinks that he knows it not. Look at the beauty of this expression. So, avijñātam vijanata, avijñātam avijanata. So here we have a similar vein. It knows itself, and in itself it lives. It moves where no thought is, nor any form. So that's why the word used is Shambhu, Swam Prakash. All these words in its own light it sees itself and knows itself.
But moves where no thought is.
Yes. Its feet are steadied upon finite things. Its wings can dare to cross the infinite. We can understand the infinite. What it means to cross the infinite. It means that even infinity can be a conception, but it crosses that. It goes beyond all conceptions, including the conception of the infinite. It crosses beyond the infinite. So that's why all that one can say is, in Mother's words, oh inconceivable splendor. Beyond conception, beyond thought. Arriving into his ken a wonder space of great and marvelous meetings called his steps, where thought leaned on a vision beyond thought and shaped a world from the unthinkable. So there we go. So it's Ashupati has now arrived in that stratosphere where it sees And what he sees is given a thought form. So it's not blind. So he's not talking of vision from the subtle vision. He's talking about a vision which the greater mind sees and instantly takes the form of thought. It comes like a flash, like a revelation. So he has gone into that realm, and where what it sees it creates. So unthinkable, what we cannot even conceive here, is self-evident there. And it has a power within it to create. On peaks imagination cannot tread, in the horizons of a tireless sight. Under a blue veil of eternity, the splendors of ideal mind were seen, outstretched across the boundaries of things known. Yeah, beautiful. On peaks imagination cannot tread. Often people ask this. How are you so sure that all this is not imagination? Because we have to start with imaginations, because either imagination or idea, then how do you know it is not imagination? Sri Aurobindo gave a very beautiful, in an aphorism, a reply, what scientists call as hallucinations, etc. But I often say in a very simple way, try imagining the divine presence within. Try it. And the day you cross that little film you are creating out of your imagination and get it, then you know the difference. You know now you are imagining and now it is there. And when it is there, it is so spontaneous and so real. How can the mind, even Sri Ramakrishna was told once by some of his disciples, Vivekananda would tell him, Totapuri, the Gyan Yogin, he told him, all this thing is not the real thing, it's the silent self, there is no such vision of gods there. So like a child he goes and tells Mother Kali, is it true? Am I just seeing these things? They're like a child. He says that, this. Next day, Totapuri comes and says, what did you do yesterday? He says, why? He says, Kali was dancing all over me and I was so frightened to my core. No, whatever you are experiencing is true. I will never doubt it again. Is it true? This power which goes beyond, it can take any form and appear. That's why he has used the word being and creation. Under a blue veil of eternity. Origin of the little that we are, instinct with the endless more that we must be, a prop of all that human strength enacts. Creator of hopes by earth unrealized. It spreads beyond the expanding universe. It wings beyond the boundaries of dream. It overtops the ceiling of life's soar. So many examples.
Such vastness.
Yeah. So many examples. Who could have imagined in 1857 when the mutiny was over and all the alliance of Lakshmi Bai of Jhansi and Nana Fadnavis and Tantia, this Tipu Sultan had collapsed. It was like now it's no way that India can be free. Who could have imagined that was a seed planted for India's freedom? And it was decided on that day that India would be free. There are Danton, I was reading that life. When he is being guillotined, Sri Aurobindo's own previous life, at the age of maybe 35 or 38 or 32, young age. And he is speaking about freedom, equality and fraternity. And he is guillotined. Who could have imagined that today even a baby will be born and say, I want freedom? Dad, I want equality. What level equality? You and me are equals. Don't talk to me like a child. Equality is fraternity, calling names. It's so sweet when children call names. I have some children, people talk about some of the new age children. Other day, I had been to Australia, there is this child, Arya.
Oh yes.
Have you met?
Yeah, oh yes.
Yeah. So she would call me, Alok, Hi Alok, how are you doing? So they were a bit, parent. I know this is something so sweet to hear because this is the original ashram. In ashram originally, people were not called da or di. So a child could say Nolini,
Yes.
and I found it so practical because one of the things was you forgot the age. The moment you say da, you feel already I am an elder brother. If you say uncle means I am like my hairs are graying. And if you celebrate my birthday means like gone. I am growing older. But call by the name, so beautiful, this. Now today's children demand that freedom, equality has gone into the home. And Danton, when he sacrificed, they were talking of a dream which was never realized and people would have never imagined. Uh, Congress as early as 19, I must qualify the then Congress, fatwa utwa nahi nikalna chahiye. So, when Sri Aurobindo was writing for Indu Prakash, the moderates, they told him, don't write such fiery writings. You are claiming full independence, complete independence is an impossibility. Sri Aurobindo was the first person who has used the word Purn Swaraj. Very few people know it. So they said, no, this is impossible. We should at least have our voice. We don't mind remaining under the British rule, but we must have our own say. That was the maximum that the then leaders could dream of. And it came to a point where Sri Aurobindo was politely nudged that please don't write such fiery articles, otherwise freedom will not come, but we will be in jail. So Sri Aurobindo dropped off from the Indu Prakash, and later on he had his own 3 journals, Dharma and Karmi Yogin and Bande Matram. But just imagine, they could not dream that's possible. And Purna Swaraj, which means not just outer, but inner freedom. Awake in a luminous sphere unbound by thought, exposed to omniscient immensity. Look at this. Every line is so, the image that this thought is basking in the light of omniscience. Because omniscience is in supramental. It's not yet omniscience. But it's receiving the light from the omniscience. So there is in it a touch of omniscience. Exposed. It casts on our world its great crowned influences. Its speed that outstrips the ambling of the hours. Again, look at this commonplace term. Ambling.
Yeah.
Like lolling.
Yeah.
Loitering. How Sri Aurobindo has used these common words lifted to what heights? Ambling of the hours. It's like idly passing by, is moving around.
Yeah.
But he has gone beyond this space of time and looked far into the far avenues of the beyond. This is a line from Savitri. Its force that strides invincibly through time. Its mights that bridge the gulf twixt man and God. Its lights that combat ignorance and death. It's the characteristic action of this world, these powers of the greater mind and its embodiments, that they will always give hope, always give the sense of being uplifted, because it's able to see that ultimately, that line in Savitri, night is not our beginning nor our end. From the light we come, by light we live, and to the light we go. She is the dark mother in whose home we have hid from too early an exposure to that light. So, that is vision, that is looking at the much larger picture. Otherwise we become cynics. So this thought fights cynicism. It destroys pessimism. It brings hope because it can see what the mortal eyes dare not see. In its vast ambit of ideal space, where beauty and mightiness walk hand in hand. Look at it. We have this idea of beauty with frailty. I don't know how this idea is crept, especially in Indian mind. Because in India, the ideal of beauty is Durga. So Durga is beautiful and Durga is mighty. You can't come near her. Even the gods are frightened. She can bring out of her the force of Kali and destroy not only the demons, but even the gods start shivering. Even Shiva comes and lies at her feet that please be quiet. So this ideal of beauty and might coming together, that seemingly two opposites, we see this reconciliation of opposites which take place in the supramental. We see this idealized in certain high thought of humanity. For example, when Valmiki describes Rama, he describes it as very komal, very tender, but he is so strong that by his name you can swear strength. If there is an icon of strength, it is Rama. If there is an icon of tenderness, it is Rama. He weeps, missing his wife who is, suddenly lost, and he is weeping in the forest. Where is Sita? He has so much love in his heart. But at the same time, when it comes to facing the demon king, he doesn't, flinch. So this beauty and might coming together, even in this yoga, Sri Aurobindo speaks of it in synthesis toward the end, where Saumyata and Raudra, these two aspects which seem like opposites, they come together in one being. We see it in Shiva, Asutosh and Rudra, two very different sides. We see in Krishna, the Krishna of Vrindavan, dancing around like a careless cowherd boy, and we see Krishna of Kurukshetra, Kalosmi Bhava Lok Shekrat Pravadva, I have come to destroy. So
And
you
the
see,
beautiful line, beauty is his footprint.
yes, showing us where he has passed. So this beauty is a very different beauty. It's a powerful beauty. And beauty conquered the resisting world. There's another line in Savitri. So beauty and mightiness walk hand in hand. These spirits' truths take form as living gods, and each can build a world in its own right. This was one of the difficulties of the mother when the supramental world had come and begun its work. The gods were in a bit of a quandary, because man will finally grow greater than the gods. So what will the place of the gods? So the mother asked Durga to surrender. There is a very beautiful passage. So the disciple asked, what do you mean that Durga surrenders? He said, my child, all of them are like an absolute. They are great gods. They have absolute power over their own domain. And they know somewhere that there is something beyond. But otherwise, this idea that I have to surrender, it's unique to humans. So she has to cajole and tell Durga that, you will have the joy of surrender. And then she has the joy of surrender. And the whole game plan changes, because later on, when there are a lot of adverse forces which come and mother speaks of them and Durga is quietly sitting. She said Durga was there. So he asked Durga, what happened to you? She said, no, I have lost that tendency now. I don't. I see your love which is transforming. It's a different game plan. So she had to do that. Otherwise Durga was driving all these demons into the subconscious. So for a while they will not resurface. Then after a while they will resurface. That is why every year you have to have Durga Puja and kill Ravan, because he goes down, again he resurfaces. So the game has changed. But each of them is a god. There is a real god, being, and they are absolute in their own might and right. And they have a right, and what they do, the others honor. There are so many stories. If Shiva gives a boon, Brahma may feel bad about it, but he can't help it. Or if Brahma gives a boon, Vishnu may feel he has upset the balance, but he says, I have to correct it. No choice. So this is the way these gods work. Even they can shelter. There are stories where Kali gives abhay to a very dark being who has worshipped her. And she has promised to him, whenever you call me, I'll come and I'll destroy whoever is in front of you. And there comes a time when Shiva has to destroy this being. And then he invokes Kali. Now Kali is there. And he says, it doesn't matter because I am here, I have to fulfill. Now Shiva tries to reason out that, see, you know who she is. He says, yes, but I am bound by my dharma. And she swallows Shiva. There is a whole story like that. And Vishnu has to intervene because each of these gods are absolute in their own right. And you can't do anything about it. Of course, ultimately they serve a greater plan which they themselves don't know. That is the supreme mystery.
But if they want to evolve,
they have to take a human
birth.
form. That is the only way. That's the beauty of human beings. They have a psychic being. There's the story of Anusuya, but that's about the vital gods, where she says only human beings can have that unalloyed love because they have the psychic being.
Yes.
So, but here she is speaking about these gods. Few more lines. in an air which doubt and error cannot mark, because they see it. When Sri Aurobindo was asked, how do you know? He says, I know it because I see it. So doubt and error cannot mark, with the stigmata of their deformity. Now what is error? It deforms truth. It also draws material from truth. How does it deform? It will glue us to a surface appearance and show us, look here, where is supermind? See, this what is happening. It is not showing you things which are behind. It is not showing you things which are around. And therefore it is falsifying our vision. But to somebody who can see this totality and see the depth, he will never be shaken.
And he uses the word stigmata.
Stigmata, that's right. Yeah. In communion with the musing privacy of a truth that sees in an unerring light, where the sight falters not, nor wanders thought. See these lines, those who have read some of those great lines from Upanishads, these lines are so uplifting. Who would like to read anything else? Look at these lines, I'll read again. In communion with the musing privacy of a truth that sees in an unerring light, where the sight falters not, nor wanders thought, exempt from our world's exorbitant tax of tears, dreaming its luminous creation's gaze on the ideas that people eternity. Yes, meditating on these lines is liberating. Ideas that people eternity. Those are the companions of these great gods. Those great ideas that transform the world. There is their birthplace. And look at these lines, very powerful. Exempt from our world's exorbitant tax of tears. 3 qualities of the gods. I have always found them as disqualifications personally, since the time I came to know. And that's why I said Avatar is the greatest of all. 1, they do not blink. 2nd, they cast no shadow. And 3rd, they have no tears. I said they are no good for human beings. They don't understand our pain. You go to a God and say, I am suffering because of this. He'll give you if you do some prayer. But it doesn't empathize with the pain that human beings go through. We know tears and we know shadows. Therefore, we can climb to a shadowless light.
The touch of tears in mortal things.
And that's why I say that Mother and Sri Aurobindo taking a human form. And that's why there is a line in Savitri, a Godhead or the Godhead greater by a human fate. And the other one is a Godhead come down, a God come down and greater by the fall. Because you see, you touch that. When Sri Aurobindo has a tear drop in his eyes, Nalinida describes tear in the eyes of the divine, mater dolorosa. When Sri Aurobindo is informed in 1918 about Mrinalini Devi's passing away. People have these weird ideas of, and he has, in 1912 or something, he talks about Parbrahma experience, etc. And he observes a teardrop in the eyes of the divine. And he says, the perfect identification with the human at that point of time. And that is what makes Mother and Sri Aurobindo so wonderfully divine. Because they know what it is to become human. Our human frailties. When people went to Mother, someone was narrating to me that, Mother, I have lost my husband and 3-year-old child. Mother didn't say, haven't you read the Gita? You are in a spiritual place. How dare you weep? Go and read the Gita. Nothing. Mother just stood there and they noticed a glistening drop in Mother's eyes. She knew the suffering of her child. And then next moment she paused and spread out her arms and said, you want to meet him? You want to see him? He is with me. Imagine. Nothing like read the Gita, na jayate nainam chiddanti shastra. This is an intellectual way of... Gita is speaking of some other thing, not to be misapplied. Misapplication of Gita is lack of empathy with people who are suffering. Oh, what is there? Everybody comes and dies. Why are you, weeping? But Gita is not in that context. The context is you are on a battlefield where you have to slay someone for a mighty cause, the upliftment of dharma. And then you cannot afford to flinch. It's not meant to be, prayed when somebody has passed away. I don't know why they do it. Savitri is the perfect work to be read, because it understands the human state and what it means to come out of that. And the whole passage. Anyway, I am being iconoclast.
Ranga told us the other night that
In a sun blaze of joy and absolute power. So these are not, see the difference between scholarly wisdom, if wisdom we can call it, and an intuitive, inspirational thought. A scholarly thought, philosophical thought is very dry. And Mothers uses this word at one place. Oh, these philosophers, I don't like them at all. They are so dry. Scholarly people, extremely dry. You will see it because they are just going into an abstraction through the mind. Whereas the moment you cross this realm, there is joy, there is power, there is love. Your thought breathes it, and it's an uplifting thought. It's not like,
yes.
but it breathes it because it's the state of that world. So, in a sun blaze of joy and absolute power, above the masters of the ideal throne, in sessions of secure felicity, in regions of illumined certitude. Now here he has used a very interesting sentence structure, if I just use the word. What is called in poetry as inversion and things like that. Look how he writes. And a little change of stress can completely change the sense, or the sentence may appear incomplete, because sometimes people write asking for it. See, look at this line. In a sun blaze of joy and absolute power, above the masters of the ideal throne, in sessions of secure felicity, in regions of illumined certitude. So, you'll say, what next? But this is a full stop. But now read it another way. In a sun blaze of joy and absolute power, above the masters of the absolute throne, in sessions of secure felicity. Now he's speaking of that state which is above. So above is not above the masters. He's suddenly, speaking of above. Not that the masters are above, but he's suddenly turning our gaze above. Above. Who is above? Those who are bathing in this sun blaze of joy and absolute power. They are the masters. And they are secure in their felicity, because grief and error cannot touch them. And they are living in regions of illumined certitude. They know it. So it's so beautiful, some of these lines. Far are those realms from our labor and yearning and call. Perfection's reign and hallowed sanctuary, close to the uncertain thoughts of human mind, remote from the turbid tread of mortal life. So they are sun-blaze regions above, where these masters are living secure in their felicity. But the human mind, with its turbidity, cannot enter there. Turbidity in the mind is doubt, despair. It cannot enter there. But when we cast it away, then the light falls. It's like the clouds which do not allow us. Labor. There they are secure in their hallowed sanctuary, where perfection is self-evident. But since our secret selves are next of kin, this line is so wonderful, because every time as a doctor I experience, when a patient comes, they ask next of kin. So normally it is some relative. So I always believe relatives are relatives. And a relative, don't give them absolute importance. They're only relative. But we give them absolute importance. Relative is more important than God. That's what happened to Vivekananda. He said, my sister and mother, one of the first lessons, they are suffering. Can you pray to Kali, the world mother, to help them? And Ramakrishna said, you go and pray. So he goes and prays. He comes out, he says, you prayed. He said, what to do? When I stood before her, I asked for Jnana Bhakti Vairagya. Yes. So Ramakrishna said, fool, go inside. Pray for your relatives. Again he comes out, he says, when I stand before world mother, what shall I ask for my relatives? I will ask her for the eternal things, those things that will endure. So you see this, why I was reminded was, who is our next of kin? We are next of kin to those great gods. So next time when we pass before Ganpati temple, we can say, hi, how are you doing? Surrounded by all the bhaktas, eh? Must be terrible. And surely Ganpati will take out a little sweat of brow and say, yeah, I know. You understand my state. Thank you. They are feeding with me with all the diabetic laddus and not even hygienic. They will break the coconut and feed me this water. Imagine if I give them a bout of diarrhea, how will they take it? Hey, this is an exchange you can have. They are our next of kin. One of the signs that when you rise in that greater mind, the gods become your brothers and sisters. This is there in that story when one of the rishis goes to Lord Vishnu. So Vishnu's Dwarpal tell him, you can't gain an entry. He is a god. He says, doesn't matter, I am a rishi. Ultimately, he curses these two fellows. You get out of my way and go down into worlds of hell and darkness. So they are shivering. And he goes, and even there is a story where one of the rishis actually he kicks on one of the gods. And the gods carry that imprint. I don't know, some of you may have seen. Bhagwan ke chhati par unka chhap hai. These sages could go to what extent? Bhrigu. Bhrigu is one, and there is another story, but this is the story about Bhrigu, where he goes and does that. And it's amazing. Or the story of Parshuram, where he goes and even Ganpati is, one of the teeth. Now, this is because they treat them like brothers and sisters. Of course, like brothers, they end up fighting because they are not yet in the highest light. But imagine next of kin. Look at this one line. When you are in that greater mind, the gods and goddesses are like your friends. And mother would often say, when Badri Vishal came, Narayana, somebody gave her. This is a very sweet story. Maybe we can close with this and read it further there. So, she used to keep Ganpati on her napkins or handkerchief. Then now Narayana came from Badrinath. He says he's a very nice fellow. So, good God, very nice God. And Ganpati is also good. But Narayana is a little bit, he won't like to just be with Ganpati just like that. He has a status. So she first tells Narayana, because when she is keeping an idol, it's not an idol, they manifest. So she tells him that, Ganesh, Ganpati is a very nice, sweet child of mine. So I'm giving you a very special place. And then she arranges nicely the handkerchief and then she makes him sit. He says, don't mind, he's a very nice child of mine. And when you read those stories, you wonder, so many stories of the mother, they are next of kin. Imagine Sri Aurobindo is concentrated, one of the stories where he is concentrated in pulling down the supermind and Sri Krishna is pacing up and down to meet him. These are real stories, similar to some stories in the scriptures. But modern mind has forgotten it. So today we have only the gods. So people can't imagine that you can be equal to the gods and even go beyond them. But by its nature, supramental beings will be greater than the gods. I think we can close here.